At the end of a documentary film, after all the producer credits, all the director credits, all the editor credits, two names appear under a very specific category: additional cinematography by. And those two names are Suga and Jimin. Now, before you think this is just a technical detail that doesn't matter, let me ask you something. When a director hands a camera to the subject of his film and says, "Record whatever you want," what is he actually giving them? He is not just giving them a tool, he is giving them control over the narrative. And in a documentary about 7 people who have lived under the scrutiny of cameras for more than a decade, who are used to being controlled, curated, and packaged for public consumption, the moment when they are handed a camera and left to choose for themselves what they want to record is the most honest moment that can exist in any film. And Suga chose to record something, and Jimin chose to record something different. And both of those choices, without either of them realizing it, revealed more about who they actually are than hundreds of hours of structured interviews ever could. You will find out exactly what they recorded, and you will understand why it matters by the end of this video. So don't go anywhere. Hey everyone, welcome back. On this channel, we look for what exists beneath the surface, not just what happened, but why it exists, why it was chosen, and what is revealed by a choice that seems small, but turns out to be deeply meaningful. If this is your first time here, hit subscribe and turn on notifications, because content like this, that digs far deeper than the average headline, is what we consistently bring to this space. All right, let's get into it. March 27, 2026, Netflix released a 92-minute documentary titled BTS: The Return. The film was directed by Bao Nguyen, the filmmaker best known for The Greatest Night in Pop, the documentary about the recording of We Are the World. In other words, this was not an ordinary director. This was someone with deep experience stepping into rooms where major artists were at work and knowing exactly how to capture a moment without destroying it. The film follows BTS's journey from Los Angeles, where they gathered in a rented house after nearly 4 years of not working together as a complete group, all the way to Seoul, where they finally released the album Arirang and launched the comeback the world had been waiting for. During the months of filming, Nguyen made one decision that turned out to be the most brilliant decision in the entire film. He gave each member of BTS, all 7 of them, including Suga and Jimin, their own personal video camera. Not a phone camera, not a production camera, a video camera that felt personal, the kind that a brother, a mother, or an uncle might use to film a family vacation. And he told them, record whatever you want. No brief, no guidelines, no curation from the production team. Just a camera and complete freedom. And the result, the footage they shot themselves, made it into the film. And at the end of the credits, all of their names appear under the same credit: additional cinematography by RM, Jin, Suga, J-Hope, Jimin, V, Jungkook. But from those 7 names, 2 have consistently become the most discussed since the film released: Suga and Jimin. To understand why footage from Suga and Jimin's personal cameras became the most analyzed part of the entire film, we need to establish one thing first. For more than a decade, BTS has been one of the most documented entities in global entertainment. Content existed almost every single day. Variety shows, interviews, behind-the-scenes footage, vlogs, Q&A sessions, live streams. But all of it, without exception, passed through one filter: the HYBE production team, which means that before any content reached the public eye, decisions had already been made about what was allowed to be seen and what wasn't, what survived the editing process and what was cut, which angle was used and which angle was removed. This is not an accusation, it is simply the reality of the modern entertainment industry. And that is exactly why the moment when Suga and Jimin were handed cameras and left completely free to record, with no brief from HYBE, no curation from any team, only Nguyen extending full trust, became something fundamentally different from anything that had existed before. For the first time, in the scale of a feature-length film streaming globally on Netflix, the public was seeing what Suga and Jimin chose to record when no one was directing them. And those choices speak volumes. Suga chose to record the people around him, not landscapes, not the luxurious recording studio, not iconic moments. People. The footage from Suga's personal camera is filled with close-ups of other members' faces in completely unguarded moments, while they were eating, while they were debating lyrics, while they had no idea a camera was pointed at them. There is footage where Suga records J-Hope laughing loudly at something that never makes it into the audio clip. There is footage where he records RM sitting alone with headphones on, eyes closed, listening to a demo track. And there is one piece of footage which became the most clipped and shared by the Yunmin community, where Suga records Jimin. Not Jimin performing, not Jimin posing, Jimin sitting in the corner of a room with headphones resting around his neck, staring at the floor with an expression that is difficult to define, like someone who is thinking very deeply about something he has no intention of putting into words. Suga says nothing, he simply records for a few seconds. Then the camera turns away. And that small moment, which lasts no more than 8 seconds in the film, became one of the most screenshotted and analyzed frames on the entire internet after the documentary released.
But wait, because what Jimin recorded with his own camera is equally surprising, just in a completely different way. Jimin did not record the people around him. Jimin recorded places. He recorded corners of the rented house in Los Angeles that served as their base for months. The kitchen where they had dinner together, a window facing the garden, a staircase where afternoon light entered from a perfect angle. There is one piece of footage from Jimin's camera that shows an empty dining table. After everyone had gone, after all the dishes had been cleared, just the table with traces suggesting that life had recently been there. A cup of tea not quite finished, a sheet of paper with handwriting too small to read. And Jimin recorded that, quietly, without a single word. Director Nien, in his interview with Variety, said that the footage from the members' personal cameras produced a very specific visual language, like the way someone photographs a family vacation. There's an intimacy that no professional production camera can replicate. And that is absolutely true, because the footage from Suga and Jimin, with all of its technical imperfections, with angles that are sometimes uneven, with focus that occasionally drifts, feels more real than all the professional production footage in the rest of the film. And here is something that almost no one has talked about in any depth. The contrast between those two choices is not random. It is not coincidence. Suga chose to record people. Jimin chose to record places. And when you place those two choices alongside everything we already know about who these two people are, a pattern that is extraordinarily coherent begins to emerge. Suga is someone who, behind all the cool efficiency and blunt delivery, is deeply oriented toward relationships. He values the people around him in ways he rarely expresses verbally. He almost never offers direct compliments, but he is present, he pays attention, he records. And Jimin is someone who, behind all the explosive stage energy and warmth he radiates toward everyone around him, is deeply sentimental about moments and places. Rolling Stone specifically described him in the documentary as a gentle homebody who can sit alone for 10 hours without boredom, someone who proudly points out the dish towel his mother gave him, someone who recorded an empty dining table because he already understood that table would not always be there. That specific moment would never repeat itself in exactly the same way. Both of those things, Suga recording humans, Jimin recording moments, are not contradictions. They are two different ways of saying the same thing. I don't want to lose this. And this is the part that almost nobody discusses. Director Bao Nian, in his longer interview with The Hollywood Reporter, revealed something very specific about the experience of filming this documentary. He said that one of his biggest challenges was finding a way to film BTS without disturbing them, because BTS, more than any artist he had ever documented, were extraordinarily aware of the presence of a camera. They had lived with cameras for more than a decade. They had become very skilled at distinguishing the moments when they were performing from the moments when they were allowed to simply exist. And the solution he found was exactly this: giving them cameras of their own. Because when you are holding a camera, you are no longer the subject, you become the observer. And it is in that role as observer, not as an artist being recorded, that Suga and Jimin finally appeared exactly as they are. Nyen also said something very specific about the personal camera footage. He said that they were actually giving us and the camera more than I expected, far more than you can usually get from a documentary about major artists. And that, in my opinion, is one of the most honest statements ever made about BTS. They gave more than was expected, not because they were asked to, not because a contract required it, but because when they were given trust, they responded to that trust by offering themselves completely. Now, let's go to the deeper dimension. The fact that Suga and Jimin are the two members whose personal camera footage has been most analyzed by the fan community is not something that happened randomly. There is a reason why these two people, out of 7 members who are all compelling and all carry powerful narratives, consistently become the most discussed in the context of this personal camera footage. And the reason, in my view, connects to something very specific about the dynamic between Suga and Jimin that has been forming for more than a decade. Both of them are people who very rarely show their most private selves directly to the public. This is not to say they are closed off. Both are open in their own ways. Jimin is known for being warm and expressive. Suga is known for being honest and unfiltered in his opinions. But there is a specific layer in each of them, the quietest layer, the least performative layer, that almost never surfaces in front of any production camera. And the personal camera that Nyen handed them, without anyone planning for this, opened that layer. Jimin recording an empty dining table is Jimin not performing for anyone. That is Jimin speaking to himself through the images he chose to preserve. Suga recording Jimin staring at the floor is Suga not making content. That is Suga paying attention, the way he always does, quietly, without needing anyone to know. And those two actions, Jimin recording a moment without any people in it, Suga recording a person in the middle of a moment, when placed side by side, creates something that feels like a conversation that was never spoken out loud. Here is where everything comes together. At the end of BTS The Return, after all the names of technicians, all the names of producers, all the names that make a film possible, there are 7 names in a single line. 7 people who each held a camera and chose to record something. 7 people who for the first time were given the opportunity to be the storytellers of their own story, not just the subjects of someone else's. And from those 7 names, 2 became the most discussed for the longest time. Not because their footage was the most dramatic, not because they recorded the most iconic moments, but because what they recorded felt the most honest. Suga recorded the person he pays attention to without ever needing to announce that he is paying attention. Jimin recorded the moment he did not want to forget, even before he knew he would miss it. And both of them, without ever speaking to each other about what they wanted to preserve, indirectly recorded the same thing: memory, care, presence. 3 things that have always existed between them, even in the most ordinary moments, even when there is no audience, even when the camera they are holding belongs to them and only they decide whether that footage is worth showing to the world. And the world finally got the chance to see it. Not through an edited variety show, not through a curated behind-the-scenes package, not through a prepared interview, but through 8 seconds of Suga recording Jimin in the corner of a room, and a few seconds of Jimin recording an empty table after everyone had gone. 2 small frames from 2 personal cameras in a rented house in Los Angeles that has probably faded from the memory of everyone except the 2 of them, but which will exist permanently in the closing credits of a Netflix film that has been watched by millions of people around the world. Additional cinematography by Suga, Jimin. Now that question comes back to you. If a documentary director handed you a camera and gave you complete freedom, no brief, no direction, no curation, what would you record? And from everything we have covered today, Suga's footage, Jimin's footage, two choices that are so different yet somehow perfectly complete each other, which part resonated with you the most? Write it in the comments. I read everything, and the question of what a person chooses to preserve when no one is requiring them to, that is one of the most meaningful questions we can explore together in this space. If this video gave you a new perspective on Suga, Jimin, and what we are actually watching when we sit down with BTS The Return, leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already. That is the most direct way to support us in continuing to make content like this. And for the next video, I have been preparing an analysis of one specific scene from BTS The Return that almost no one has examined in any real depth. A scene that lasts only a few minutes in the film, but one that once you know its full context, will completely change the way you understand the entire journey behind the Arirang album that is currently rewriting the history of world tours. See you there. And as always, thank you for watching until the end. Your decision to stay is the reason this channel exists.